or the Red Star for bravery behind enemy lines. But I digress. But the thing is, the UN is not legitimate. It is, how many of the governments at the UN would you say are legitimate governments that actually derive...
No, it's a complete and total fraud, but the banksters created it to transfer our liberties and freedoms into, to transfer our Constitution into, so they could claim it was legitimate and could override us. I want to get into the treaty.
What you're saying, though, is if you're a tin-horn dick...
Stay there. We'll be right back.
We're on the march. The Empire's on the run.
Painted white with my siren.
We are back live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Bob Dacy, writer for the New American Magazine, good friend of mine for at least 14 years, is here in studio with us. Okay, we've been talking about the UN and how it was founded. You're welcome to get into all that, but let's race through. You've already covered one document. Let's get into 7277. Let's get into a new document you've discovered, because I'm going to have my great writers, you're welcome to do it too, write a whole article out of this. Just more proof that the UN wants you disarmed so they can take good care of you like they do all over the world, which means lining you up and blowing your heads off before they take your property. Bob Dacy, please continue.
Alex, my point about legitimacy is that the UN has no legitimacy, and so why do we spend so much time funding them and helping them along and all that? Obviously, the bankers control the whole thing, fine, whatever. But I think it's lost in the shuffle that they aren't legitimate. They have no legitimacy at all, and the best solution is to defund them and get out. That's the best solution. Just kick them out. Because if we kicked them out, we take away all of that financial support, the whole thing would collapse. It's a house of cards.
No, it's a bunch of criminals.
Yeah, it's a bunch of criminals. It's a bunch of criminals. They go to New York. They go to Bloomingdale's. They get a $2,000 suit. They get themselves some kind of a fancy Cadillac with some flags on it.
Well, diplomatic immunity.
Yeah, and they can violate all the traffic laws.
Everybody kisses their butt.
And all of a sudden, they're legitimate. Almost every government in the world is illegitimate because they do not have their power from the consent of the governed. Yet you have a whole bunch of them get together.
Well, that's another point. Obama says the government makes everything. Well, if it's a small government and helps guard rights and is empowered and actually has the consent and is popular, then occasionally it's not a bad thing. But when they're don't have the consent, they're always like bone cancer.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you have kids and there's a daycare center that they go to, would you want the president of the Child Molesters Association of America running the daycare center?
No.
The point is, the UN is completely illegitimate. Now, having said that, let me go on. All right, that article that I was reading from a while ago was 2001. They do it all the time. They want to take your guns away. I found the new one, Improving the Effectiveness of the Program of Action on Small Arms, Implementation Challenges and Opportunities, written by a Sarah Parker, UNIDIR, again, 2011. So I figured, UNIDIR was a good place to find dirt on the UN, and sure enough, it's a great place to find dirt on the UN. This document wants to improve the effectiveness of their program of action on small arms. And guess what their program of action on small arms is? Get rid of them. Get them out of civilian control, as in the previous document. And guys,
document cam, zoom in, even though it's on me. So go ahead and read it.
Okay.
And then we'll flip it right side up in a minute. Just on those documents, please.
All right. This is what we're talking about. Improving the effectiveness of the program of action on small arms, which is something they've been after all the time. You cannot have an armed population and enslave them, and they know this. The bankers know this. The UN knows it. Everybody knows it. So why don't you know it? All right. Now, what they talk about, this is not the whole document. I just printed off a few pages. They talk about all these different levels of doing things in order to control small arms. And I'll just read a couple of things. Marking and tracing. You ever heard of that? Yeah, marking and tracing. That's what they want to do. Micro stamping, whatever. They want to do it. They want to do that. Record keeping. What do you think record keeping
Registration.
means? What do you think record keeping means? Is that some little bookkeeper in the back room just jotting stuff down for no reason? No, record keeping. Disposal and destruction of confiscated, seized, or collected small arms. Collected. Moratoria on small arms.
That's why they have these legal gun buybacks, to create the image of cops and people turning guns in.
Yeah. Moratoria on small arms and light weapons manufacture.
Which is what Obama has said he's going to go after, the manufacturers.
What is that?
What is Bloomberg doing? Suing them. That's the goal. Shut them down.
So they have kind of a chart here of various different ways that they want to get their stuff done. It's called Description of implementation challenge identified. Implementation challenge. Now, what is an implementation? That means you want to implement this. The challenge is they're having problems with it. Okay, so we have a description of implementation challenge identified. They have all different things listed. One of them is that the firearms protocol has not yet been ratified. Oh, really? One of them is greater regulation of, no, it says greater, no, it doesn't say greater. It says regulation of firearms ownership. Regulation of firearms ownership? What is that?
That's what's in the treaty.
Greater controls and responsibility.
This whole thing's written for individuals.
Yeah. Greater controls and responsibility for firearms owners is required. For firearms owners is required. All right? They have an inadequate legal framework they're complaining about. Keep on going. Record keeping. They have lack of funds for an electronic database. Oh, boo. They don't have enough money to have their electronic database.
So they need to ship guns into Mexico to call for it.
Here's another one. Need national electronic register or database. And they're talking about every nation here, you know. Going on down, the description of implementation of challenge identified. Need to train law enforcement providers in weapons collection, management, and destruction. I'm sorry, did I just read that from the Unidary website? Hang on just a second. Need to train law enforcement providers in weapons collection and destruction.
Need to train the local police in confiscating guns. Well, we have the Army document. They're training to take guns. It's public.
They have a problem here. They have lack of financial support for collection and destruction. So that's a challenge that they have to face at the UN. They don't have enough money, so they're probably going to use the loss treaty to tax everybody so they can fund this thing. I don't know. Training is needed in modern methods of destruction. So they need to train some more people on how to destroy the weapons after they collect them.
Of course, in Australia and England, they use a giant metal buzzsaw and just chop them up.
Now, here the next one of the segments is called public awareness, otherwise known as propaganda. To reinforce ongoing awareness campaigns to prevent the illicit ownership, transfer, and use of firearms. So, in other words, to con you out of your guns, basically.
And not let you sell them to your neighbor. Which is banning the gun show loophole, doesn't let you give a gun to your grandson.
Like the previous document I was reading from was talking about, is get rid of these things, and we need a civil society campaign, because after all, who could argue against taking these guns away because it's for the children? I mean, it's just ongoing. Now, let me read this part. Instruction and education needed to overcome fear due to misleading information in context of civilian surrender of small arms and light weapons. Context of civilian surrender.
All over the world, they come and take all the guns and then murder everybody or have the next tribe do it. And wherever they're in control in countries, they totally ban guns. In New York and Chicago, where they're in control, have banned them. And we've got the Attorney General saying he wants to ban them when he was Deputy Attorney General. But we're supposed to ignore all of that because they go on to say we've got to basically propagandize people that we're not going to take their guns.
Right. It's like the movie. Ack, we're your friends. We're your friends.
Don't run. We are your friends.
Blam, blam. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the same thing. All right. Now, here's another one. Mark in the description of marking and tracing. Lack of regional coordination of the system for the registration of legal weapons.
Yeah, and again, Forbes did their analysis and said why all gun owners should be up in arms, and it says it registers and then it bans semi-auto and blocks importation to begin with, and this is not even a big issue in America right now because George Soros says it's not real. He said, so, I mean, if a tornado's about to hit your town, just call Soros up and say there's no tornado. And he'll say, no tornado, and it'll just disappear.
Well, I hate to disagree.
No, George, because just like Kim Jong-il.
I hate to disagree with Mr. Soros, but right here under the section description.
No, he admits he wants to ban your guns, but it doesn't exist if you resist him.
Record keeping, it says right here, there is the need to develop a regional system for registering legal weapons in each country. Oh. In each country, there is a need. And
the treaty just leaves it wide open for the UN to do whatever it wants.
Don't you think that if they got this, they would share information in the interest of global cooperation?
Well, no, they've said they want Mexico to be able to sue because of Fast and Furious sue America, not the people that ship the guns down there to destabilize Mexico.
Yeah. Now we have another one. Regional security is a problem, an implementation challenge. And I just highlighted this because it's funny. It says continued unchecked outflow of guns from North America.
No. They did Fast and Furious to not just blame the Second Amendment, but to make it an international issue to get the treaty ratified.
Yeah, it's all part of the same thing. These people do everything. You name any aspect of society, any aspect of human behavior, these people are on it in order to disarm you. Now, this is the kicker right here. You say, well, this is what Unidir wants to do, but what does this have to do with the treaty? What does it have to do with this arms trade treaty that they're talking about right now up in New York? What does it have to do with it? Well, how about this? One of the questions raised during the Unidir workshop was whether states would prioritize implementations of the POA, that's Program of Action, if it were a legally binding treaty as opposed to a political instrument. In this regard, developments with respect to a future arms trade treaty, ATT, arms trade treaty, were noted. Some of the POA commitments relating to international transfers of small arms and light weapons may be covered and enhanced by an arms trade treaty with the added bonus that they will be legally binding.
So you do an arms trade treaty that's really an individual arms control disarmament treaty, which is the United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World. Even the armies and police disarmed. After they go through this tumultuous takeover period, then it's only the UN that's armed.
Now, let me repeat that again, because that's the central reason why I'm on talking to you right now. This is UNIDIR, the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research, one of their papers.
The policy board that writes the UN treaty.
And they're sitting there tagging this paper of theirs of all their problems that they're having getting all their little gun confiscations done, and they're tagging it to this future arms trade treaty, which is right now.
And they say the bonus is we'll sneak it through in an arms control treaty.
With the added bonus that they will be legally binding. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what more you need to understand that this arms trade treaty is just another Trojan horse.
Well, it's not even a Trojan horse, though. It's just that they count on no one reading it. So show that document, the document cam. Now, you got a whole stack. We only got like 10 minutes of broadcast time left here. 7277, tell us about that since it's right there.
All right, 7277. Here, 7277, Freedom from War, was a State Department publication printed way back in the day, a kind of a cooperation between the United Nations and the United States State Department. State Department publication 7277.
Flip through it. Very loving.
And very, very briefly, what this thing is.
This is the policy of the U.S. government.
And the point is, before I read through this, the point of this, if you think, if it says in here that the United States was agreeing in 1961 to disarm our own military. Do you understand that? To disarm our own military, to turn our nuclear arsenal over to the United Nations. It says that in here. Now, if you think that the UN is going to not mess with our Second Amendment, yet they're going to disarm our military, hey, you're in la-la land, buddy. Now, some of the stuff in this document, again, this thing is, you can find, my son,
show it, it's amazing. I've got a copy of the original one around here somewhere.
My son actually,
flip that back. I want to see the intro page.
Yeah, this is
second page. Show them the second page.
Second page?
Just start flipping through it, Bob.
Okay, there you go. Freedom from War.